our society. So who were these men? These men were serial killers. They were responsible for the deaths of dozens of people, and your society seems to be fascinated with them. The National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime defines serial killers as serial murder as the unlawful killing of two or more people by the same offender in separate events. In a publication on the FBI's website titled Serial Murder, new reports highlight views of the experts. Serial killers are rare, probably less than 1% of all murders. They do, however, receive a lot of attention in news and on screen, and much information out there is wrong. Yet, the public, the media, and even enforcement professionals who have limited experience with serial murder often believe that what they read and this information can hinder investigations. To further understand serial killer celebrities, today I will talk about some famous serial killers, some reasons why they kill, and finally, how they have infiltrated our culture. So, to start off, I will talk about the first of 3 serial killers that are famous. Jeffrey Dahmer. In his A&E biography, it is stated that Jeffrey Dahmer was responsible for the deaths of 17 men. He would scout for men in the local gay scene. Then, once alone, he would drug them so they became submissive. He would then take them to his apartment, where on some of them he would perform experiments where he would drill holes into their brain and actually inject acid in order to try to create living zombies. These men wouldn't live more than a day, mostly. On the rest, he would kill them by way of suffocation. If he liked the people he had, he would keep part of them as trophies. Skulls, arms, legs, things like that. He was also known to perform cannibalistic acts. He felt this would keep part of them within himself. To the rest of the parts that he didn't want, like once the carcasses started smelling, he had a 57-gallon drum in his apartment full of acid in which he would submerge the bodies, and once they had turned into sludge, he would just simply flush them or drain them. He was finally caught when one of his victims actually escaped and informed the authorities. He was sentenced to life in prison, but he was killed by another inmate. The second serial killer I will talk about is John Wayne Gacy. In the book American Villains, it is said that John Wayne Gacy was a family man. He had a family, he was successful, and on the weekends he even entertained children as Pogo the Clown. He did, however, confess to the murder of 33 victims. He would find his victims, abduct them, or sometimes just bring them into his home. There he would rape, torture, and finally kill them. He disposed of the bodies by burying them in the crawl space underneath his house, or in some cases, in a nearby river. He was finally caught when one of his victims was, they connected him to the disappearance of one of his victims. He was sentenced to death and finally died by lethal injection. The third and final serial killer I talk about is Ted Bundy. In his A&E biography, it is stated that Ted Bundy is at least responsible for the murder of 30 women. He would scout his victims by approaching them or having them approach him. He usually played on their kindness by wearing casts or using fake crutches. He would then bring them close to his car, where he usually had a crowbar which he would strike them in the head, put them in his car, and drive them to wherever his destination was. If the women were still alive, he would rape them. If not, he would just have sex with the bodies. He would then leave the bodies, and then was known to return and have sex with the carcasses. He was caught when one of his victims was able to fight him off and inform the authorities. He, however, escaped prison twice. He was finally caught in Florida when he had been killing there. He was sentenced to death and was finally killed by way of the electric chair. So, now that you know a little about these serial killers, I'll talk to you about their motives. In an interview with Stone Phillips, Jeffrey Dahmer stated, The only motive there ever was to completely control a person I found physically attractive, and keep them with me as long as possible, even if it meant just keeping a part of them. In Ronson's book, it is stated that Jeffrey Dahmer wanted a companion, a living zombie that he could always have with him without having to deal with. For Ted Bundy, it was a different story. In an interview he had with Dr. Dobson, he describes an obsession with pornography, an addiction. He says it began with just pornography, then escalated to hardcore pornography, and eventually it wasn't enough for him. He wanted to act out his fantasies. People close to him, however, in his biography, psychiatrists believe it was out of revenge for women. As a child, he grew up believing his mother was his older sister and his grandparents were his parents. He finally discovered the truth around the same time that his only true love broke up with him. Later on, a pattern was discovered among his victims. They all resembled his first love, and they all wore their hair long and parted down the middle, just like her. Now let's talk about John Wayne Gacy. In his biography, it is stated that Gacy was a closet homosexual. He, however, described himself as bisexual. He never agreed to being gay. He kept his urges hidden, and it is thought that he finally exploded, and it was in a violent way. So, now that we've talked a little bit about these men and why they killed, let's talk how they have affected our culture. These men, during their time, became celebrities. Jeffrey Dahmer, in his biography, one of the investigators stated how Jeffrey Dahmer told him, once you hear my story, you will become famous. Alright? John Wayne Gacy, in the book American Villains, John Wayne Gacy had even been boasting about how many books and movies there were about him. And Ted Bundy was the one that most used his celebrity. During court, he would have girls sitting inside the courtroom flirting with him. He could be seen looking at them, winking at them, having flirty gestures. Now let's talk about David Schmidt. In his book, Natural Born Celebrities, Serial Killers in American Culture, he defines murderabilia. Murderabilia is an industry in which artifacts of serial killers or things about serial killers are sold. Here's some examples. I don't know if you guys can see it, but this is an action figure of Jeffrey Dahmer. And this is a lock of Charles Manson's hair. People go on websites like murderauction.com and pay several amounts of dollars for objects like this. Alright. Today I talked about some serial killers, why they killed, and finally how they have affected our culture. These men were responsible for heinous crimes, and people seem to still be fascinated with them. So, next time, think about it. The person sitting next to you could be the next serial killer rock star.